Alright, so I pulled this off real quick and took the flat wheel and cleaned it up a little bit. That way there's not any sharp edges on it. I still got my line here, indicator here. So that gives me a rough guess about where this is gonna be. I'll place it up there, pull this line again and line this up. Right at 28 5/8. Still on it. Take the speed square, just kind of make sure it's flush with that inside of that frame. Pull it one more time since we moved it, make sure it's still good. It's still right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that in place. Now we have got to center these up for 49 3/4. That one fits in, and that one fits in too. That one's actually kind of squeezed together a little bit. Might have pried that wall out a little bit, just a hair. I could take it and just hammer it and it'll slide in, but I'm not going to wedge it in there. But that right there gives me a rough fit to let me know that I'm right in line where the axle needs to be. I've got the leaf springs clamped onto the axle. It is a spring under axle, which means the springs go under the axle. The best way for fit up is to use the U-bolts. Unfortunately, the one piece of hardware the customer forgot to bring, because he wanted to bring everything instead of me going to get it, was the U-bolts. He may want me to use the other U-bolts, I don't know, we'll get that figured out. But in the meantime, quick and easy, just take clamps and clamp the spring to the axle. Luckily enough for me, these custom spring perches here are wide enough that I can actually clamp the spring to the perch, because normally they're a little bit smaller and I'd have to clamp the spring to the axle. Axle's round, it's a huge pain in the butt to do. But this worked out super easy. Once we got the springs clamped down, went ahead and put them in the brackets up here. They fit in perfect. I slid the bolts in. Keep in mind, you don't want to slide the bolts all the way in because you don't want them splines to wedge into that metal just yet. That comes later on when you're setting everything and you want them splines to grip into that metal so they don't move. But right now we want to be able to take them in and out, so put them in just far enough to kind of hold everything in place. The total measurement was 41.5 for the center of the axle. So if you look here, we'll slide this through, pull from the front of the trailer. We're sitting somewhere between 41.5 to 42 inches. Keep in mind, when we put this back bracket on, one, you got the extension plate, you got the bracket, and then you're gonna have the shackles. That's gonna lift up on the axle. It's actually kind of heavy, I gotta stand up. As you lift up, it's actually moving the axle towards you and should put us right on 41.5. The rear brackets are going to be opposite measurements of the front brackets, as in, you notice the spring sits down in front of the inside the front bracket, so we pulled inner wall to inner wall. As you can see, when this sits down, it sits on top of this, meaning it is the same width as this. So we'll be pulling like normal from outer wall to outer wall, and for that I need 49 3/4 from this outer wall to the outer wall over there. I messed up again. The bracket here, I pulled the center of the eye for the rear of the spring is right here, and we moved an 1.5 inches backwards when we should have went an 1.5 inches forward for that offset instead of going backwards. It should have been inward, that way it was under the spring. But one thing I did learn from the mock-up of what we just had is that the shackle on the new shackles that the customer gave me are 3 1/8, which is what Agri Supply sells, and for some reason the ones over there are 4 and something. I can't remember exactly what I measured it out. One of the good things about the way I did have it is this bracket is already centered on the plate. I have to re-square up the extension plate, but if the extension plate gets re-squared, then technically the top bracket should be square also, so I shouldn't even have to worry about that. That's why I only broke the tacks on the extension plate. Alright, so like I said, that is actually 1.5 inches inward, and the shackle is sitting on the bracket. So that's obviously not going to work. We're going to have to pull this back and slightly offset it just shy of where that mark was. If I can find the mark, it's right there. Alright, so that's 3/4 from the center of the eye to the bolt that's actually in the bracket. I'm going to square this up and tack it in place. Just like that. We're going to do the same thing on the other side.